Guinea-Bissau is under military rule again after a coup on November 26th. The junta leaders claim they seized power to stop unnamed politicians and drug traffickers from destabilizing the country. Where does this leave the 2.2 million strong nation? It's the 11th successful coup on the continent since 2020 and the second one this year after Madagascar. But Guineans have lived through several successful and attempted military takeovers since the country gained independence more than 50 years ago. Let's take a closer look. Now, the first coup in Guinea-Bissau was carried out on 14th November 1980 by then Prime Minister João Bernardo Vieira, who overthrew President Louis Cabral in a bloodless coup. Following a year-long civil war, President Vieira was forced to resign after General Ansumane led a military revolt. In 2003, General Verissimo Correa Sibra led a successful military coup, ousting President Kumba Yala over unpaid military wages and a stagnant economy. During the presidential election, the military seized power, dissolved institutions, detained interim president Raimundo Pereira, election front runner Carlos Gomez Jr., and his challenger Kumba Yala, leading to instability in the country. Nearly 10 years later, President Umaro Embalo survived after gunmen attacked the presidential palace during a cabinet meeting. The government said it was a coup attempt linked to drug trafficking. In December 2023, reports of a failed attempted coup prompted President Embalo to dissolve parliament, and in October this year, military officers were arrested and accused of plotting a coup. And on November 26th, President Umaro Sissoco Embalo was ousted just a day before the results of a disputed presidential election were announced. The former head of the Presidential Guard, Brigadier General Dennis Inter, has now been sworn in as interim leader, and this is what he had to say about why he seized power.
The intense activity carried out by well-known drug traffickers who, taking advantage of the electoral process, sought by all means to infiltrate, manipulate, and ultimately capture Guinea-Bissau's own democracy.
The United Nations has described Guinea-Bissau as Africa's first narco state because it's a key transit point for cocaine coming from Latin America to Europe. It has many uninhabited islands, allowing access to drug traffickers accused of working with help from the military. In August 2021, outside President Umaro Embalo refused to extradite Antonio Ijai, a former coup leader wanted by the U.S. for alleged links to drug trafficking Colombian gangs. And in January this year, a Guinea-Bissau court sentenced 4 men from Latin America to 17 years each for drug trafficking. The African Union and the West African Regional Bloc, that is ECOWAS, have both suspended Guinea-Bissau after the military takeover, but civil society groups and election observers are questioning the timing.
In Guinea-Bissau, it is not what some people would say palace coup. It was not a palace coup. We know coups. Real coups, palace coups we know in Nigeria. This was not even a palace coup. I was looking for the appropriate word to describe. I couldn't get it. I described it as a ceremonial coup. It was a ceremony conducted by the head of state himself.
Let's hear more from Paul Ejime. He's a consultant on governance, communications, and a journalist. He joins me from London, UK. Mr. Ejime, thank you for joining us here on Africa Matters. So what is different about the Guinea-Bissau coup, and was it staged in your view?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's one of those coups that is weird or strange, as it were, because for somebody who claims that he's been toppled, he's the one that announces it, and then is also saying that he's detained, and but has the chance to be talking with the press, the international press, to tell them that he's been detained. So that is what makes it very strange. Not only that, what follows too, the fact that all the military leaders that, starting with the man who took over, General Hota Inter, to the man who is appointed the prime minister, and then even the 28 member cabinet that has been formed, all of them, or most of them, are allies of Mbalo, President Umaru Siseko Mbalo, who claims that he has been toppled. And so, and I'm not the only one saying it. Those who were there, like I was when it happened, former President Goodluck Jonathan of Nigeria, who led an observation mission there. He led the West African Elders Forum. And then the Prime Minister of Senegal, who was not there, but was been following up, Ousmane Sissoko. They are all of the view that this is fabricated.
All right.
From what has happened, yeah.
All right, so were the people of Guinea-Bissau expecting this? Did they see this happening? Because, I mean, it happened even before a day before the presidential elections were announced.
I wouldn't say so, because the election, to be fair, was very peaceful and orderly. All the observers got that, arrived at that conclusion. And the Electoral Commission, the leadership had actually announced, like you said, that on Thursday they were going to announce the provisional result, which means there was no violence, there was nothing. But suddenly, on a day before, the 26th, there was this sporadic shooting at the villa, at the palace, and then the invasion of the office or the headquarters of the Electoral Commission. And it was barricaded, and some of their materials and equipment, sensitive ones, were cutted out. People saw them removing them. And the observers wanted to go there to ask what is the reason, but they were not allowed to do so. So it was all, I think they sprang that surprise on the nation. But when they were shooting, of course, people were running helter-skelter. Right. But they didn't, I don't think the Guineans were prepared for this kind of comedy, because of film. Somebody was saying that they probably have to go to filmmakers to learn how to organize coups.
All right. And what role did the drug trafficking play in the coup and in politics going forward, since the military actually used it to justify the takeover?
Exactly. They were talking about, of course, Guinea-Bissau is a narco state, known for hard drug trafficking. But they now mention the fact that some drug lords were trying to scuttle democratic process. That's what they said. And what has happened, they also detained the leader of a very prominent leader who was even excluded from running in the presidency, Domingo Pereira. Domingo Pereira formed a platform which a very prominent party, the party that brought independence to Guinea-Bissau and Cabo Verde. They used to be the same country until they broke away. The African Party for Independence of Guinea-Bissau and Cabo Verde. He led it, but he was excluded. And what he did now, because he now asked all his members to rally behind the opposition and independent candidate, who is Fernando Diaz da Costa, who was said to be, in fact, da Costa and Mbalo were claiming that they were victory in the election before the army struck. So I think Pereira is still detained, his family, and then the community of Portuguese organization, they're asking for his release. Diaz is being protected by Nigeria. He's hiding at the Nigerian embassy compound. While Embalo himself, they took him out to Senegal, but because the prime minister there had already said that the coup was a sham, right. So he ran away. He's now in Congo Brazzaville.
All right.
And I guess that from there, people think that he's still trying to remote control what is happening in Guinea-Bissau, his country.
All right. So what does the latest coup mean for, Guinean democracy, since it doesn't appear to have the support? And what will it take to return civilian rule?
It's going to be very complex and difficult. The country is known for political instability since independence from Portugal in 1973. They've had more than a dozen coups before, plus now 4 under President Embalo. 2 that happened between 2022 and 2023. He used that to dissolve parliament. The country doesn't have parliament as we speak, even though the platform of Domingo Pereira had won, absolute majority, 54 out of 102 seats in the 2023 election, but they've not been allowed to function. So it means it adds to the insecurity, the instability of Guinea-Bissau, which has never known peace. In fact, only 2 or so of its former leaders had actually completed their terms.
All right.
Embalo is one of them, but he has come up with this magic that people are talking about, his plan. He says he's ruling, he's governing under what he called Embaloism. Right. What nobody knows what that means.
All right. And Jimmy, there have been several coups and attempted coups in Guinea-Bissau since independence. That's in 1974. So,
yes.
Just a follow-up question would be, what are some of the underlying issues that Guinea-Bissau needs to address so as to end this, coups that have been happening in that country?
One is this narcotic issue. The drug problem is one. 2 is the poverty in the country. This is a country that is under the UN development indicators. Is one of the poorest countries. There is no level of education. And then the security, the army, is one of those where you have more senior officers than the rank and file. ECOWAS had talked about trying to do some security sector reform. That has not happened. And actually, they have been trying to work under what they call the Conakry Accord of 2016. It has not been allowed to happen. So what is there is that I think the only solution that will be acceptable to the international community and perhaps most Guineans is for the electoral process to be concluded and then the winner announced. But it has to be with the help of the international community led by ECOWAS. However they want to do it, they shouldn't allow this military because they seem to be consolidating their position. And then the Electoral Commission is now saying that because they have removed the server, the computers, and everything documents, they are no longer in a position to conclude. I think it's all because maybe after they arrested them, they are now afraid for their lives. They are not ready to do anything. But if the international community led by ECOWAS, if they can put pressure on the military regime, I think they should just return to barracks and then conclude the electoral process and move forward from there. They need to be guided. They need to be supported by the international community for peace to return in the country.
All right, Paul Ejime, a consultant on governance communication, is also a journalist. Thank you for talking to us here on Africa Matters.
Thank you for having me, Brenda. Have a good day.
Still to come here on Africa Matters.
I'm Timothy Obiezu in Abuja, where Nigerian authorities have launched a major recruitment drive for 20,000 new police officers after a recent surge in kidnappings. I'll be looking at whether this move marks a real turning point or is it just a political gesture?
To Nigeria now, where the government has responded to a spiraling national security crisis by ordering the immediate hiring of 20,000 new police officers. The West African nation has spent nearly 2 decades struggling to contain attacks and mass kidnappings, as Timothy Obiezu reports.
On the evening of November 12th, Boko Haram struck Yusuf Gaji's hometown of Chibok in northeast Nigeria, kidnapping 8 girls, including 2 of his nieces.
These people, they are in the bush and they send their wives and those to go and prepare a meal because there is insufficient of water in the bush. And then from there, these people came in without gunshots and then packed the girls and their mother.
The name Chibok still evokes memories of the 2014 mass abduction of 276 schoolgirls. About 90 of them remain in captivity, according to the Bring Back Our Girls advocacy group. Nigeria is struggling to curb kidnappings carried out by armed groups, some seeking to advance extremist ideologies, others aiming to squeeze heavy ransoms from families.
In just 5 days, armed gangs carried out 3 major raids that sparked national outrage. The most shocking was at a Catholic school in Niger State, where more than 300 students were taken.
Armed groups often kidnap students for ransom in remote areas, and the latest wave has intensified scrutiny of Nigeria's persistent security failures. Last week, the government announced the recruitment of 20,000 additional police personnel and ordered the withdrawal of officers assigned to VIPs, redeploying them to bolster national security.
I thought the area you should be looking at more is how the recruitment, the processes to make sure that there's no infiltration from the bandits or other criminals, that should be our concern. Then the training should also be another concern of ours. And then the weapons, police training should be re-engineered to accommodate, some sort of training that you give for insurgency, the same training you give for counter-insurgency.
Nigeria has an estimated 371,000 police officers, but about a third are assigned to special duties, leaving a significant gap in community policing.
It's a desperate move. Definitely is desperate. Some will not like to join the army or the police if they have better livelihood. But because they are idle, you finish school or you finish your university or any other thing, no job.
President Bola Tinubu has also declared a national security emergency and authorized the deployment of trained guards to flush out armed groups hiding in forests. As the recruitment process begins, help cannot come soon enough for families like Gaji's. Timothy Obiezu, Africa Matters, Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, South Africa is dealing with a different challenge. The country's official unemployment rate remains high at around 32% in the third quarter of 2025. With the lack of jobs in the country, many South Africans are working at abandoned coal mines illegally to make a living. But even that is being threatened as the country transitions toward green energy. Rahul Radhakrishnan has more.
It's poorly lit and dangerous, but they've been at it for hours. This is an illegal coal mine in South Africa's Ermelo. It supplies many people living in informal settlements around the town with cooking and heating needs. And it's also a primary source of income for many.
You can calculate all these people that are doing this job now. You will find out that half of the youth from here in Ermelo are doing this job.
Cypriel, not his real name, wanted to become a lawyer. But he began mining illegally due to the lack of employment opportunities in the country.
You know when you're carrying in that the upper surface is a stone. Might it happen that it falls down it can kill me. That's what you must face when you get inside. Take all the fears, shove it away. I don't know how, but we try.
South Africa is among the world's leading coal producers, supplying at least 80% of the country's electricity. In South African, informal miners are known as zama-zamas, which in local Zulu means take a chance. Officially, the government calls them illegal miners, but they prefer the term artisanal miners.
It's not fair because the people of South Africa, all of us, we know that electricity is coming from in Mpumalanga. But it's not easy to using electricity because it's too expensive.
The South African Federation of Trade Unions estimates that there are between 30,000 and 100,000 zama-zamas across the country. Residents of these mining towns rarely benefit from large-scale mining.
We have to talk about equity and recognize that our people, ever since the beginning of time here in Emelo, have never benefited anything. I'm not talking about surviving. I'm talking about benefit, meaningful participation and benefit from the minerals. Never.
Applications for mining permits are costly and slow, he says. And a new bill by South Africa's government to formalize artisanal mining has been stuck in bureaucratic traffic for months. The country is also taking steps to produce cleaner energy. That's a matter of concern for these miners.
So for us, just transition means transitioning from large-scale destructive extraction form of mining into a sustainable artisanal and small-scale mining sector that is to ensure that no one is left behind, especially the informal sector.
The fear in these communities is that the energy transition may once again leave them behind. Rahul Radhakrishnan, Africa Matters.
We head to the Republic of Congo next, where around 20% of children under the age of 5 are suffering from chronic malnutrition. But hope could be at hand thanks to an engineer who is using local raw materials to produce a nutritious porridge. Brice Kinhou has more from Brazzaville.
Clover Mengo Mwamba, a 36 years Congolese engineer, regularly visits markets in Brazzaville to buy grains such as maize, soybeans, and peanuts. These are the ingredients for making his enriched Potobayo flour. Mwamba's goal is to eradicate child malnutrition in Congo and strengthen the immune system of people living with various diseases. He uses local raw materials that are not only accessible but also affordable.
We noticed high rates of malnutrition in our country. I even saw relatives of mine lose their children to malnutrition. When I was a child, my mother had HIV and could no longer eat solid food. She needed enriched porridge, but there was none available. I lost my mother, but I vowed to ensure that others would not lose their mothers or children.
After several clinical trials, Potobayo received accreditation from the Congolese Ministry of Health for public consumption in March 2025.
It's a very nutritious porridge that is accessible to all households. If Potobayo can be produced in large quantities, it could contribute to effectively combating malnutrition in Congo.
Since the public consumption of Potobayo has been approved by the relevant authorities, Clover Mengo Mwamba frequently delivers his porridge to hospitals, particularly to nursing mothers and pregnant women.
There are people who came in a really bad way and in addition to antiretroviral drugs, took Potobayo porridge and quickly recovered. This was recently the case for a mother and a child. That's why we recommend it. The proof is there.
Potobayo has been well received all around, from the population to local authorities and even United Nations agencies such as World Food Programme. The High Commissioner for Refugees and others may adopt it after carrying out A few more tests. Briscoe, Africa Matters, Brazzaville, Republic of Congo.
That's our show this week. Share your thoughts and suggestions about the Guinea-Bissau coup and what's the way forward. You can leave your comments on the stories you've seen on Africa Matters YouTube page or on X. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Brenda Zeda Radido.